On Saturday, June 20th, 2026, Iran shut down a stretch of water most Americans couldn't point to on a map. But every single day, it carries 1/5 of the entire world's oil supply. Here's the part that should stop you cold. Hours after Iran declared it closed, the United States military said over 50 ships sailed straight through it that same day, carrying 17 million barrels of oil. So who's telling the truth? Why does a 33-kilometer strip of water keep deciding whether your gas price goes up? And why does this keep happening over and over every few weeks? This isn't a one-time crisis. It's the 4th or 5th time Iran has opened and slammed shut this exact waterway since February. Almost nobody is connecting the dots on why. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll understand a hidden toll booth economy, a peace deal with a loophole big enough to drive a tanker through, and a war that may have been completely avoidable by 48 hours of patience. Let's start with what happened on June 20th. Iran's top military command, the Khatam al-Anbiya headquarters, announced the strait was closed to all vessels, blaming a U.S. breach of the ceasefire signed 2 days earlier and Israeli strikes in southern Lebanon overnight. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Navy warned ships their safety could not be guaranteed if they came near. Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson, Esmail Baghai, pushed further, arguing Washington bears direct responsibility for Israel's actions and is legally obligated to rein in its own ally. Within hours, U.S. Central Command published numbers that flatly contradicted Tehran. 55 merchant ships moved through the strait that same Saturday, carrying more than 17 million barrels of oil. Vice President J.D. Vance had said almost the same thing that morning, claiming traffic was basically back to pre-war levels. So which is it? Closed or business as usual? Probably both. This wasn't a physical blockade. It was a signal aimed at the negotiating table in Switzerland. To understand why Iran keeps doing this, rewind to February 28, 2026, the day this war began. In under 12 hours, the US and Israel launched nearly 900 strikes across Iran. The opening wave killed Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, who had ruled the country since 1989, and struck a girls' school next to a naval base in Manab, killing around 170 people. Iran's government nearly collapsed within hours. Over 40 officials were killed in that first strike. But by the next morning, an interim leadership council was already standing, almost as if the plan had been ready for years. The succession broke nearly 50 years of precedent. Khamenei's own son, Mojtaba Khamenei, became the new supreme leader. In a system that had only ever had 2 leaders since the 1979 revolution, Iran now effectively runs on a dynasty. Iran's retaliation came fast. Missiles and drones on Tel Aviv, US bases, and Gulf states allied with Washington. By early March, Israel was striking deep into Beirut. A war that started over Iran's nuclear program became a 3-front regional war within days. Most coverage stops at those headlines, but the strait itself became its own battlefield, with its own economy, its own rules, and its own loophole-riddled peace deal. Let's go there next. As the war dragged on, Iran turned the strait into a literal toll booth. Shipping companies wanting safe passage had to get vetted by the Revolutionary Guard, some paying as much as $2 million per ship just to cross. Chaos at sea got genuinely strange. In March, Iran's Revolutionary Guard turned away 2 Chinese vessels outright, and a Thai-flagged cargo ship ran aground trying to navigate around the danger zone. Here's the legal twist almost nobody covers. Charging tolls in an international strait like Hormuz actually violates maritime law. But neither the US nor Iran has even signed the treaty that defines that law, the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. Only Oman has. It gets bigger than wartime extortion, too. Iran and Oman are quietly drafting a permanent new authority to govern the strait long after this war ends. A development that could reshape who controls 1/5 of the planet's oil, regardless of what any ceasefire says. And even the June peace deal only locks in free passage for 60 days. After that, Iran can legally start charging tolls again. Let's talk about that peace deal. Because the fine print is where this gets wild. On June 18th, Trump and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian signed a 14-point memorandum of understanding, not in Switzerland, where it was originally scheduled, but suddenly at Versailles Palace in France. Pakistan, which had mediated the first direct US-Iran talks since the 1979 revolution, brokered the framework. Clause 1 promises an end to fighting, including in Lebanon. But Israel and Hezbollah never signed this deal. Only the US and Iran did. Israel can keep striking Lebanon without technically violating anything Iran agreed to. Clause 4 covers the US naval blockade on Iran. Washington agreed to fully lift it and withdraw forces within 30 days. Clause 6 promises Iran at least $300 billion for reconstruction, funded by unnamed regional partners, with no detail on who pays. Trump has hinted Gulf states should cover it, not American taxpayers. Clause 7 covers sanctions, but never specifies whether that means US sanctions or the UN ones too. Clause 8 covers Iran's uranium, roughly 440 kilograms enriched to 60%, just below weapons grade. Here's the gut punch. 2 days before the war started, in informal Geneva talks, Iran had quietly offered to dilute that exact stockpile to a harmless level. The war, the assassination, the thousands of deaths, may have been avoidable by 48 hours of patience. Even Trump's rhetoric flipped. On day one, he told Iranians, quote, "This will probably be your only chance for generations to overthrow their government." Months later at the G7, he claimed, quote, "I never cared about regime change." So is this peace, or just round two with better paperwork? The military side has its own buried stories. Israel didn't strike randomly. They tracked down and assassinated Ali Reza Tangziri, the Iranian admiral personally overseeing the Hormuz blockade. The US tried running armed tanker escorts through an operation called Project Freedom. It lasted exactly 1 day before being paused. 7 Iranian boats sunk, and a French container ship hit in the crossfire. Across the broader crisis, at least 17 merchant ships were damaged, 2 were captured outright, and 12 sailors were killed or went missing. A port worker in Bahrain was killed just doing his job on the dock. None of these people were soldiers. The Lebanon front is its own mess. Hezbollah isn't part of Lebanon's official military. It's a separate armed group, meaning Beirut's government has no real authority to stop the fighting. Hezbollah's leader, Naim Qassem, has said any Israeli move outside a full ceasefire will be confronted, and that the project to dismantle Hezbollah has fallen. Even Israel's messaging shifts by audience. Its Arabic language spokesperson has told regional viewers that calm depends on Hezbollah stopping hostile activity, a softer framing than its English statements. The casualty numbers are staggering. Nearly 4,000 people killed in Lebanon since early March, against roughly 36 Israeli soldiers and civilians in that same stretch. This is nowhere close to over. So where does this leave us, heading into talks scheduled in Switzerland this Sunday, June 21st? Even when the strait is technically open, it may not be safe. Insurance premiums have either skyrocketed or vanished, because nobody can confirm the mines laid earlier in the war have actually been cleared. Back in March, analysts warned Brent crude could spike past $140 a barrel if the blockade held. Iraq was forced to declare force majeure, cutting nearly 1.5 million barrels of daily output. Prices haven't returned to those highs, but Saturday's announcement proves how fast that could change. One closure, real or symbolic, and the most important oil choke point on Earth becomes a bargaining chip again. Here's the uncomfortable truth. In the Strait of Hormuz, a closure doesn't have to be real to work. The threat alone moves oil markets and negotiating tables. If you want the next chapter once the Switzerland talks wrap up, that's coming. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.